Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, and I'm here with Erica L. Ayala. And listen, we had to jump on because there is some WNBA news that we need to talk about. And unfortunately, we're going to start off with something that is not so great. And that's that Caitlin Clark announced yesterday that she will miss the remainder of the season, Erica. I know, and it's something that we've been talking about. Is she going to come back? Is she not? But she wrote yesterday that I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with a singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who has had my back through all of the uncertainty. And then she went on to say, this has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way the fans continue to show up for me and for the Fever brought me so much joy and an important perspective. I am so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot in the playoffs, okay? So the part for me is, she said that even in the bad, there is good. I mean, what good can come out of this for Indiana, Erica?
Well, I think firstly, and we've alluded to this, talked about it, wondered about it, is that the risk you run in having Clark come back this season is that it would be, if I'm not mistaken, Alicia, her third return to play, which means that if she had any setbacks, that would be her fourth time stepping away. Only played 13 games this season for the Indiana Fever. And for me, as for all of the people who are saying that this is the worst news and it's really bad for the WNBA, I get where that's coming from. And there's a very real swell of emotion that is in that kind of thinking. But for me, what's worse is if she had to go back on the injured list, if she came back before she felt she was 100% confident and strong, given the injury, really the injuries that she had been going through this season. For me, that would have been worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, she hasn't played since June 15th due to a groin injury. She started with a left quad strain and was out for 3 weeks, then left with a groin injury that sidelined her for 2 weeks before going down with a right groin injury. And then while rehabbing, also suffered a left ankle bone bruise. And she missed out on the Commissioner's Cup and All-Star Weekend and obviously have been sitting out since then. And listen, the team has dealt with so many different injuries as well, in addition to hers. In total, the team has had 5 players go down with season-ending injuries, including Caitlin Clark. So Chloe Bibby is the most recent one to go down with a season-ending knee injury. Before that, Sophie Cunningham tore her MCL, and Sydney Colson tore her ACL, and Ari McDonald went out with a broken right foot. And so, I mean, listen, injury after injury after injury. When it comes to Caitlin too, I understand that they would want her back, but I too agree with you in a lot of different ways on this. But specifically, she has such a long career ahead of her. This is her sophomore season, and I understand, everybody was excited to watch her play. Everybody was waiting to see what she would do, and she put in some great numbers when she was on the court, right? I mean, not as great as the first season, but she didn't really have a lot of time out there. And so right here, specifically, if you want to look at it, in 2024, she played 40 games. This year, only 13, 19.2 points per game in that first season, 16.5 this season, 8.4 assists per game, and then 8.8 this season. But the 3-point percentage was 34.4 in her first season and 27.9% this season. And so, you look at the numbers, you look at the injuries that were happening, you look at the injuries on the team, and it's just like, it didn't really make sense to even chance it. She's not only just playing this season. This isn't the only season of basketball for her. She has a lot going on down the line. And so I believe that this was the right move for the Indiana Fever and for Caitlin Clark overall.
I agree. I want to come back though to something that you mentioned with regard to the Indiana fever. But another thing is a lot of people, I found it surprised. I found it surprising, excuse me, how surprised people were that Clark made this announcement official when really she wasn't practicing very much with the team in the last week. We're going into the last week of the season and she still wasn't cleared for contact even when she was doing so. There's a difference between being at practice and being able to participate in quote unquote some basketball activities, but if you are not participating in the contact activities or you're not participating fully in practice, that's a steep hill to climb in the last week of the season, then to try and figure out how to get back and ready for a playoff run, which of course the Indiana Fever, that was their goal this year. So, but regarding the Fever, outside of Caitlin Clark, she's one of 5 players that has a season-ending injury. And why I think that's interesting is because if you step out just from Clark here, is there a conversation maybe that the Indiana Fever are going to have as an organization when it comes to evaluating what the recovery process is? Because, it's just odd that a lot of because the Fever is not the only team that has players with season-ending injuries. They're not the only team that has seen players with prolonged and extended injuries within the season, but to have 5 of the players that we see with season-ending injuries on the same franchise, I think it's fair to question, not saying that there is anything wrong with the training staff, but I think it's fair to question if that's a part of what needs to be observed when you look at it from the Fever perspective, who was a team that a lot of people thought could make a deep run, Alicia, in the playoffs.
Yeah, as a franchise, when you have that many injured players, you have to look at it no matter what. It doesn't matter who the players are, it's the number in itself is something that needs to prompt you to look a little bit into what the practices are there. Not to knock, their staff by any means. Like we said, there are many teams that do have players with season-ending injuries, and listen, there's some luck in things that happen in the season, and unfortunately they haven't been on the lucky side when it comes to injuries. But with the sheer amount, you have to kind of do a little investigation or do your due diligence into that, just for the future of your players and the future of your franchise.
Indeed. And perhaps if Indiana does participate, or any other team, in that exercise, I would imagine that something else that we've talked about on the show will come up, in that it's more games, but not an elongated season. And these games are being compact into this season. And it's, again, a conversation that it seems like Kathy Engelbert is taking to heart. We certainly hear the players talking about how, even though with charter flights, sometimes you'll have things like a player like Emma Miesemann, or someone who comes in because you're down a player, and they might be on the road for 2 weeks before they even have a full practice. These are all things that impact what you see on the court, and of course can have an impact on the wear and tear that athletes are having. You need recovery time. You need to be able to have people run through sets and things in practice, and not, as much as possible, learning it on the fly, so to speak, to use a hockey term, on the court with their team.
Yeah, I mean, the overall injuries that we've had this year have to be looked at. You have to look at the impact of what, the schedule, what even expansion in the future is going to mean for all of these things, right? I know that according to the Next Hoops, there was a study done by the National Institute of Health from 2015 to 2019, 34 game seasons found that 195 injuries during those 4 years, and a total of 1,352 games were missed. And that did not state that all injured player reports were available, because of course we're not getting all the information when it comes to these injuries. But if you just look at over the past 2.5 seasons, as the number of games have gone up, looking at around 551 total illness or injuries and over 2,000 games lost. When you look at that, you have to look into, just as the Indiana Fever has to look into their own franchise and what's happening there, the W has to look into what is happening with these injuries as a whole, and they need to change some things around. Whether they find that it directly correlates or not, there has to be some type of movement in that area to help protect these players. even further as we go on, because the schedules are just going to get more rigorous. The games are going to increase. The travel is increasing with the amount of teams that are going to be in this league. I mean, there's so many different variables that are going to contribute to injuries. So you need to look at how you're going to make this better as a whole for these players. You can't just sit by and just let it happen. You have to do some things to make sure that they're as safe as they can be moving forward.
And then the last thing I have on this topic, as we continue to kind of build out to outside of Caitlin Clark, how this could impact the league, the conversation of injuries, that is that I think what you said can be interpreted a few different ways. I think the way that the league, in the past at least, has been trying to combat injury is by having WNBA players prioritize the WNBA, because the women's basketball ecosystem is still one in where, to make what a lot of players consider is either livable, for some, but more so equitable when it comes to how professional athletes, specifically in basketball, are paid, playing overseas or in addition to the WNBA is a part of that. So the league, I think, wants prioritization, and I think players and athletes are willing to at least stay domestic, but to prioritize only the WNBA while not maybe having other leagues like Athletes Unlimited or now Unrivaled, or of course what we see overseas. That's where I think the difference of opinion goes. I think both sides, if you're looking at it, WNBPA and the players versus and the league, they want players to be healthy. Everyone wants players to be healthy, and it's a little bit of a divergent path in if and how the schedule impacts salaries or has an effect on, again, some of what we're talking about with regard to injury.
Well, I know definitely as we move into the CBA talks that are happening and what's going to happen with all of that, that's definitely going to be a huge part of that. And these injuries are a huge part of that too. Whether they are going to like it or not, they're going to have to answer to some of these things that are happening. So we'll definitely be keeping a pulse on that. I will say too, I just want to give a final thought on the way that the league is marketed as well. So coming into this season, definitely a lot of the shine was on Caitlin Clark, and I get that she does deserve to be, pushed. Her storyline should be. She's definitely a player that has made a huge impact early on in her career. But there's so many different people that we should be giving shine to and also showing in their career. And I think this is a perfect example of the league being so diverse, having so many different stories and so many different players that we should always be highlighting. And I just hope that, with this unfortunate way that things have kind of unfolded, that they realize that, all the players from the beginning of the season to the end should have their story shown. And this is a prime example of why, we don't know what's going to happen with any one player during the season. And she definitely, like I said, should be like a center story in the story of the WNBA. But her being out, I would just hope that people would give a little bit more shine to other players that are also playing and contributing and killing in this league as well. And that's why you just got to spread it out. The viewership is there. People are consuming. Just make sure that we're looking at all angles when it comes to this.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. What I hear you saying is like, spread love, like a lot of people are like, what is Caitlin Clark being out for the remainder of the regular season, which just, again, is like a week. It's
right.
What does this mean? Will the WNBA survive? And it's like, with all respect, I mean, the Fever and the league did survive. And the storylines that you're talking about, one of them is super exciting because we have an expansion team where I don't think a lot of people were giving enough attention to the Golden State Valkyries early on. And if you missed the ride early, I mean, this is a team that they hit a WNBA attendance record in the preseason. And you would know better than me, Alicia. I still haven't been out to Valhalla, but I think they've been pretty much going strong ever since.
They've definitely been going strong ever since. When I tell you that it is electric in that arena, Valhalla does not come to play. They come to support the W. And as a matter of fact, Temi Fagbenle said this last week that she almost wishes they would just support them a little bit more because they just love watching WNBA basketball. I'm paraphrasing for her, but that sentiment was there because she's like, they are fans. They know all about the league and they want to see everybody play. And of course they do support the Valkyries 1000%. But I love that these fans that come to Valhalla every single night, they have just been waiting for WNBA basketball in the Bay Area. I know I'm one of them. I lived in the Bay Area for many years. I worked for the Golden State Warriors, and every single person in that area is like, so when are we getting a W team? They've been wanting it for years, and these are true fans of the W, and they have shown it every single step of the way. The Valkyries just made history as the first expansion team to clinch a playoff berth in the inaugural season. But unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, the first home playoff game will not be played at Chase Center, while Valhalla will be wherever they play. Let's be clear. It will not be played at Chase Center, but instead at the SAP Center in San Jose because of the tennis Laver Cup tournament that is set to take place at the Chase Center. And Veronica Burton said, we can't control it. We have faith in our fans that they are going to continue to show out for us whenever we play. We're going to bring our basketball. We're confident. We're excited for the opportunity to compete. Regardless of where we're at, we're going to show up. And then the team did later on go to say that they're already working to ensure our playoff schedule is protected going forward to prevent scheduling conflicts for future playoff runs in Valhalla. But Stewie, Brianna Stewart, she weighed in on this, and this is what I want to open up our conversation about this is. She said, you want to think that you're past it. And she's talking about these continued issues of WNBA teams having to play in other venues, right? Mm-hmm. So she said, you want to think that you're past it. We want to think that we're better than this. Listen, sometimes it's out of the control of everyone involved, but it's just, you don't see this happening in the NBA. And I know for me, I was disappointed to see this because you have a team that has been playing amazing basketball all year in their inaugural season. You have a fan base that absolutely loves this team and comes out every night to support them. You own the arena. And you also know that you have this team that you want to go into the playoffs. You said it was your goal to go into the playoffs, and then you haven't locked off those dates. That is, to me, that is disappointing on every level.
I mean, you said a whole lot there, and it is disappointing. I think Stewie's comments apropos as well. I just want to go back that it's not just vibes, right? We're not just talking vibes. We're talking results. We just came off having a conversation about Caitlin Clark. A lot of people, rightfully so, as we both agree that she's transformational for women's basketball, and now that's coming to the WNBA. But how has that manifested, right? What are the results that we can point to from the Caitlin Clark effect, right? A lot of people looking at things like viewership, like merchandise sales, but also attendance. The Golden State Valkyries, even if they were not in the playoffs, they're bringing the results, right, that people point to when they talk about growth in the frame of a Caitlin Clark, an Angel Reese, et cetera, what Stewie and the New York Liberty see in Barclays Center. So for an organization, right, that, and you have to think about, sometimes these tournaments and things are signed years in advance, so we'll leave space for that. And like you said, a team that came in saying they wanted to be competitive, whether the rest of the field, I even had them just on the outside looking in. I ranked them at 9 in the preseason. And I think I was more generous than a lot of other people ranking the Valkyries ahead of their first season. But if you really thought you were going to be competitive, then you have to know, right? We knew what that schedule was going to look like. We knew that this was going to be a season in which, even if, as the lower seed, you're guaranteed one home game. So you want to think that as the league continues to grow, and it seems like they have very high standards when it comes to who they pick as expansion teams, is this a part of that conversation? Because we've seen WNBA playoff games, even, you know, deep into the playoffs, moved because of things like preseason games for NHL. We've even had NBA teams say, we'll change our preseason schedule so that the playoffs can play. We've seen that. We've seen things like Disney on Ice and etc. So, you know, this has been an ongoing issue, and will it continue to be? Or is there a way that the league can work with, especially new owners, but ownership overall, to understand that prioritizing the WNBA playoffs during the WNBA playoffs has to be a standard? Because then it goes back to not only a fan base like the Valkyries, not only a player like Caitlin Clark and all the Fever fan base, but now you're asking that group that you grabbed during the regular season to go somewhere else with very short notice. And that's, I don't know if that's cool, man. I'm not good with that.
Right. I'm not good with it either. And San Jose and San Francisco are not right next to each other. It's going to be a whole different way for the fans to get to that game. Now, do I think that Ball Hollow will come through? Yes, they absolutely will, because they are who they are, an amazing, amazing fan base. But it's not fair that they should do that. And also, it's not fair to the players that they should have to relocate either. And I don't think that should be a conversation. I mean, yeah, conversation is great, but that should be a mandate, moving forward. Like, hey, you have to make sure that they are playing in the venue that they're supposed to play in for the playoffs. I mean, if I'm a team, I'm banking every time that we go into the chip. That's what the goal is. We're not just playing games. We're going to the chip. And so make sure, and especially when you own your arena, that's another thing.
Or then what is home court advantage if you want to be playing somewhere else? Then you lose, the players lose home court advantage at possibly the most important moment for home court advantage, and that they worked to get. That's another part of this, the competitive part of it.
Yeah, and I hope that all teams, like, I don't care what team it is, I hope that all teams look at this, another example of something that shouldn't be happening, and make sure that it doesn't happen to them, okay? Because we don't want to see this for any team, and we don't want to see it for the Valkyries. But unfortunately, they will be playing that first game at the SAP Center, and we will definitely, keep tabs on that as well. And you have to keep tabs on us, because we have a lot more WNBA content and just content about women's sports in general. A lot of conversations just like this one. So tap in all of these ways. Make sure that you're subscribing to the YouTube page. We just hit 100K there. We want you to join our community. But, if you're not tapped in, we won't be able to tap in with you. All right. So, Erica, it's always amazing to have these conversations. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for joining us right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.